Your Meta ad costs are going up. It's getting harder to find new customers for your business and even harder again to stay profitable. On one hand, you're not alone, but on the other hand, there's countless numbers of e-commerce stores that are finding scaling on Meta an absolute breeze. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact 4 steps that those top performing e-commerce brands are taking in order to lower ad costs on Meta, find new customers cheaper than their competitors, and ultimately scale with ease. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to action those very steps in order to put your business in the same position. Now, if you have found your Facebook ad costs going up, you're not alone. Competition is stiffer than ever, and ad costs have objectively been rising. But there's still brands that you'll see all over Twitter, you'll see in real life, are doing really, really well on Meta. And that's because they understand why their ad costs are going up. But more importantly, they know how to fix it. So for a little bit of context, we took over a D2C brand's ad account back in December of 2024. And they had just seen record Q4 growth. But prior to that, all year, they were finding it very, very difficult to scale their ad account past 20, 30, and sometimes 35K months. So what we found was that they weren't unlocking enough margin on each new customer to sufficiently allow them reinvest that money into scaling their ad account. So they were stuck in this cycle where they were doing quite well up to a certain point, and then when they would try to push it, ROAS would plummet, and ultimately they'd be loss making above a certain point. So essentially overnight, what we did was we implemented these 4 strategies that I'm going to discuss with you today. And we were able to not only surpass or even maintain Q4 ad spend level, we actually increased it by 53%. So now we're at a point where we're spending 70K per month in Meta alone. And we're also in a position now where probably 30 to 60 days from now, we'll be spending 6 figures per month in this ad account. And it all boiled down to doing these 4 things really well. So what I wanted to show you is what I'll be discussing today are real tactics that work with real e-commerce brands. This isn't theoretical, this is reality. So my name is Liam. I have generated over $50 million in new customer revenue for D2C brands through my agency Vulcan Digital. Just want to get straight into it. You can get loads of free guides. We send out a twice weekly newsletter, so you can join us on that here. And yeah, straight away, let's jump right in and let's talk about CPM. So when your CPM is high, your ads cost more. And when your CPM is low, your ads cost less. So from that perspective, CPM is essentially the currency in which Facebook charges you to place ads on their platform. So it stands for cost per mille. So mille is the Latin word for 1,000. And essentially what it means is the cost to show your ad 1,000 times. So on Meta, unlike Google, you pay for eyeballs, you pay for people to see your ad, you don't pay for people to click on your ad. So the equation is CPM equals ad spend divided by impressions multiplied by 1,000. So if you have a fixed ad spend, let's say $1,000 per month, and you're able to generate more impressions at that fixed level, well then the impressions is your denominator. If you increase that number, your CPM will decrease. So if you can get more impressions for the same level of ad spend, your CPM, your cost of marketing, will essentially decrease. So today's video will be all about how to decrease this figure and how to increase this figure impressions. So with CPM, it's massively misunderstood. A lot of people see it as almost like a fixed value for their business, for their advertising. And they see it as a reflection of how competitive their niche or their market is. And while that has a part to play, it doesn't have half as much a part to play as several other factors that I'm going to discuss in just a few short moments. So if you can manipulate CPM, if you can be the brand that can adjust CPM, well, your cost of marketing goes down and you gain a serious competitive advantage. So I often get asked, what's a good CPM? Well, it's kind of like asking what's a good price for a home or a house. Well, it depends where you're looking. It depends what you're getting for that. It depends who you're asking. So there isn't a set good or bad CPM, but there are a series of factors that will influence your CPM. Some of these are what audience you're targeting. So if you're in a particularly competitive e-com niche, that audience might cost more because there's a lot of people trying to serve ads in front of them. Your ad quality is really important. How seasonality is something that plays a huge factor, and we'll go into that in more detail. You would have seen the national elections in the US that had a massive effect on the CPMs for all advertisers across all markets. And then we'll go into things like ad engagement rates, expected action rate, and we'll cover all that later on in the video. So what you need to know for now is there is no good CPM, in the same way there is no good price to buy a home, but there are varying factors that will influence how much you do pay for your ads on Meta. So for an additional piece of context, here is a graph showing the average CPM on Meta in the US, and that had risen to about $14, $15 at the time of recording this video. But the more important trends I want you to look at in this graph, there are two. The first is that you can see over the last 12 months, as I said at the outset of this video, ad costs are higher. That is an objective fact. And the other thing you can see is that spike that coincided not only with the US election, but more notably for e-commerce brands, Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. Two things that we can't really affect are the overall competition and then seasonality. So we can clearly see that Facebook CPMs are rising. So how do we actually react to that? And how do we stop that rise from influencing or affecting our ad performance? Well, it all starts with understanding the fundamental principle behind advertising on social media. And that encompasses understanding Facebook's goals. Facebook or Meta, like all other social media platforms, they want to keep you on the platform for as long as possible, you being the user. In order for them to do this, they want to create experiences that are really positive for their users, really engaging, and keep them on site. So that doesn't just mean that the content that they want to show people is both engaging and relevant, but it also means that the ad content, and most importantly for you as an advertiser, the ad content that Meta wants to show its users has to be relevant, has to give them a good experience, and it has to be engaging. So when you think about that, and when you start to give Meta what they want, those relevant experiences, that engaging content, Meta rewards you. And how does it actually reward you? Well, it rewards you with cheaper ad costs. You actually get lower CPMs, lower costs of marketing. So how does Meta decide what CPM to give you? Well, there's three main pillars that influence your CPM. The first is auction competitiveness. So that encompasses who you're targeting, what niche you're in e-commerce, the level of seasonality. So if it's Black Friday, it's a super competitive auction. Now, for the most part, if you're an e-com store, you can't really change who you're targeting. Of course, you can go down different verticals, you can have different customer avatars, but for the most part, you will have a core customer persona that you are looking to target. If you're a skincare brand, for example, you might be targeting females in the, say, 25 to 45 year age demo. So in that instance, you're not going to change your audience, and you're not really going to affect the level of competition. So that's not going to be something that we're going to talk about because we don't have a crazy amount of influence over it. But instead, what we will look at are the other two pillars. The first is ad quality, and the second is expected action rate. So ad quality, it's Facebook's objective measure of how good your ad is. So higher quality ads get rewarded with lower CPMs because they lead to increased engagement. Increased engagement gives the user a better experience. The user having a better experience keeps them on the platform for longer, so it improves platform retention. And as we said, we have to remember what Zuckerberg or Facebook's goal is, and that is to keep people on the platform. So you're rewarded if you are keeping people on the platform with both engaging and relevant ad experiences. You're rewarded with lower CPMs. But you have to understand how Facebook measures ad quality. So it's not a case of somebody looking at your ad and going, thumbs up, that's a really good ad, or no, I don't like this ad. There's objective measurements that Facebook takes and Facebook algorithm takes to actually measure ad quality. So some of these are things like engagement rate. So how many people are liking your post, commenting, are they sharing, are they saving? So they're all positive things. Then on the other hand, you have negative things. So how many people are seeing your ad very frequently and going, I'm not interested in this, or hide this ad, report this ad, block this ad. They're all negative things, and they lead to decreased ad quality as observed by Meta. Watch time is really important. So if you're pushing video ads, how much content are people actually watching? So are they watching it through? Are they watching the first 10% and diving off? That is a really important metric. And lastly, post-click experience. So what is the landing page load time? So are people being directed to a landing page that's super quick, really responsive, really relevant and cohesive in terms of messaging from ad to landing page. So they're all things that will influence your ad quality and also influence the third pillar, which we'll get to in due course. So if you want to improve ad quality, well, the simple answer is make better ads. We have to remember that what we want to do is we want to increase engagement with our ads. In order to do that, there's three very simple approaches that we can take. The first is to create some sort of pattern stopping hook or a pattern interrupting hook. The second thing then is we can make our content feel more native to the platform and less like an ad. And a great way to do this is influencer whitelisting. And then the third thing is we can do engagement hacking ads. And these are very nuanced. And if you get them wrong, they can have a very poor impact on the delivery of your brand to new eyeballs, to new customers. But if you get it right, they are a fantastic way, especially during peak seasonality periods like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, to actually lower your marketing costs and to be more profitable during these periods as well. So starting with pattern interrupt hooks. So people are mindlessly scrolling either through their stories on Instagram, through their feeds, etc. So what you need to do is you need to show them something that will stop them in their tracks, that will interrupt these scrolls. When you think of pattern interrupt, a lot of people will automatically say video. You need a scroll stopping video hook. But actually what we find is that for a lot of brands, they can't seem to get the video content out quick enough. And what they can do instead is they can test a whole host of hooks, particularly these pattern interrupt styles, using static ads. And when they get good feedback on what's working well from a static ad perspective, they can then use that across multiple formats, including video and obviously UGC as well. So some examples here, you'll see these kind of positive reviews, but framed negatively. And this is one from Ridge and another one from True Classic. So the eye is drawn immediately to the 1-star review. And then you say, oh, it's too slim, I can't even feel it in my pocket. So it's actually playing into one of Ridge's strongest value propositions, which is that it's very condensed. It's a very easy wallet to hold in essentially any pocket. So it's a fantastic reversal of their value proposition framed as a negative review. The same here with True Classic. Again, the eye gets drawn to a 1-star review. We're almost desensitized to seeing 5-star reviews all over social media. So this is a great pattern interrupt. And actually then you'll read what the testimonial is saying. And it is just such a clever way of getting you to stop for that split second extra. And essentially when Meta sees someone stopped on an ad for that bit longer than normally is the case, well, it feeds Meta with the data to say, okay, this is an ad that is engaging. This is an ad that people are stopping and just watching for that little bit longer. Well, it is creating a positive experience because of that. So let's lower the CPMs. Again, here's another one. So the Deux cookie dough here, they're a vegan cookie dough. They're calling out a well-known objection, which is that vegan products essentially don't taste very good. So by calling that out, very unusual for brands to do this. But when it's done well, it's really, really positive because again, it is such a good pattern interrupt. The second then is influencer whitelisting. And the reason that this works is that the content feels more native to the platform. So influencer whitelisting is essentially where you borrow or rent an influencer's Instagram account and actually run ads directly from that account. So from that perspective, as I said, people are much more receptive to it because it doesn't feel like an ad. As such, you have higher engagement, you have significantly lower CPMs. We see CPMs in the region of 50 to 60% lower than running them directly from the brand's ad account. So a really, really effective way to actually lower your CPMs and still get your messaging across. You still control all the messaging, the creative and everything like that. Next up is what we call engagement hacking ads. So there's two styles that we use every now and then. They're not things that we rely on really heavily. And the reason for this is that they don't tend to be the highest converting ads, but they do tend to be ads that really lower our CPMs. So the first is 5-second videos. So like the two that are playing down here, essentially what you're doing is very snappy cuts from one image to the next. And what that does is essentially gamifies the ad. So people will, in the case of this ad here on the left, maybe stop on a certain bag that grabs their attention. And again, here on the right, stop on a certain color that is something that catches their eye. And by basically placing their thumb on this ad by stopping the screen, they're telling Meta that they're engaging with the ad. And again, we know that if we're creating ads that are engaging, Meta rewards us with lower CPMs. So what we're doing here, we're triggering multiple auto replays. So this video could replay 3 or 4 times. The offer is really easy to get across. So as I said, it's something we do mainly in sale periods like Black Friday. And again, it is just a pattern interrupt. So it's something different. Not everyone else is doing it. And again, that can be enough to cut through the noise, to increase your engagement and to ultimately lower your ad costs. The second kind of engagement hacking ad that we use are known as carousel image pattern breaks. And what these are, they're a series of images that you basically diverge across a whole carousel. And then in between the images, you cut off the visual at certain points during the carousel. And you may tell some sort of kind of story throughout, and you may deliver an offer then at the end of this. Essentially, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to entice the user to swipe through each next visual, through each next image in the carousel, and essentially deliver them to some form of an offer at the end of the carousel, and hopefully they'll click through. But again, Meta sees someone interacting several times with one individual ad, so this carousel. And again, Meta sees that as good engagement, and you'll be rewarded with lower CPMs. What I mentioned earlier is there is a bit of a trade-off with engagement hacking ads. And that is that they're fantastic at generating all sorts of engagement, as I said. So people will stop, they'll see it as some form of a game, they'll try to view the ad maybe for that little bit longer. And they'll also like and comment a little bit more as well if you do it correctly. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a trade-off when it comes to engagement hacking ads, because you can get so focused on trying to increase your engagement that you can go beyond the standard practices of a 5-second ad or something like a carousel image pattern break, like I mentioned. And you can try to make these, very outlandish kind of claims or brass videos in an effort to gain engagement. And sure, you may be effective in doing that. But if you're a D2C brand, your North Star is increasing the volume of conversions and decreasing the cost of said conversions in your ad account. Sometimes you can get to a point where you're chasing increased engagement and actually having a net negative effect on conversion rates and CAC and things like that. So don't lose sight of why you're trying to chase engagement and lower that CPM. You're trying to do so in an effort to hold your conversion rate and ultimately increase your ROAS. Now, if you get to a point where your engagement rate goes up and your traffic goes up, but your traffic quality diminishes significantly, well, ultimately then you're going to have no positive effect on your business, and ultimately you may have a negative effect on your ability to bring in new customers profitably and consistently with time. This kind of brings us on to the most important pillar, in my opinion, and the one that has the greatest impact on your CPMs, on your cost of marketing. And that's what's known as expected action rate. So in all likelihood, if you're watching this video, you're probably a D2C brand. Basically what expected action rate means is the likelihood of someone who has just clicked through one of your ads subsequently going on to complete a purchase on your site. So this leads us on to possibly the most important point I'm going to make in this video. That is that there is a hidden conversion impact on your CPMs, on your cost of marketing. Any improvements that you can make in your conversion rate will actually lower your CPMs on Meta. And the reason for this is that as you improve your conversion rate, your overall volume of conversions increases. Meta has more data to say, okay, I think this person is more likely to have a positive experience and then go on to purchase something after this click. So it has higher confidence in your ability to convert users. As a result, you get charged lower CPMs in the auction because it's more confident. If you have lower CPMs, what does that mean? Well, if we go back to our equation, and our equation said CPM was ad spend divided by impressions multiplied by 1,000. Well, if our ad spend stays the same, but we're able to reach an increased number of people, so if our impressions goes up, well then our CPM will drop. And then when our CPM drops, we find ourselves in this positive spiral where we have more wiggle room, we have more breathing room to test new concepts, to start spending more money, and we're in this really positive cycle. And that's absolutely fantastic. But for a lot of people, you're in the complete opposite, and it's this penalty cycle. So what you have is you're not spending a whole lot of money on Meta, let's say maybe $8,000 per month, and sometimes even less. So because you're spending less, you have fewer opportunities to convert people. So fewer opportunities to convert means that fewer people will convert. So when that's the case, Meta has less data to make a confident prediction of what your expected purchase rate is. So you're assigned a lower expected purchase rate. If Meta is less confident, it gives you a lower expected purchase rate, your CPM goes up. On the contrary to how we explained the equation in the last slide, if the number of people you can reach, if your impressions goes down, then your ad spend stays fixed, well then your CPMs rise. So you have less and less wiggle room. And less wiggle room means that what will actually happen is you'll get fewer conversion opportunities, you'll get fewer people converting, and you'll then go, okay, well, ROAS is worse. I'm going to cut budget. And by cutting budget, you're actually going back to a point where you're getting even fewer conversion opportunities. And this cycle then just continues until you get yourself to a place where you're finding it incredibly difficult to get new customers from Meta. And Meta is essentially just recycling all your bottom of funnel customers who are going to convert without that touch point anyway. And in that instance, Meta has a negligible effect on the top line of your business and probably a negative effect on the P&L statement. From that perspective, then what can you actually do to get out of this cycle? It sounds a very difficult cycle to get out of. And quite often for brands, it is, because they find themselves getting less and less confident. So they retract, they go backwards. But actually what you need to do is you need to do what all the top ecom brands are doing, even when they're not in the cycle. Because even when you're in a good cycle, it always makes sense to have a really high creative velocity. Because if you can have winners in your ad account, and if you can get fresh winners in there, well then what you're going to do with time is turn that cycle around. What creative velocity is essentially how often or how many creatives you can get into your ad account every week, every month. And when I say creative, I mean distinct creative concepts. So taking big swings from different angles, different concepts will have a much more profound impact on your ad account than changing a font, changing a color. You are not going to ultimately change the trajectory of your account by doing things like this. What you need to do is you need to find your next big winner. And your next big winner will be something that will increase your CTR, your click-through rate. And if you can increase your click-through rate, you're still paying for people to see your ad. You're not paying for people to click on it. So if 1,000 people see your ad and 10 people click, that's a 1% click-through rate. If you can increase that number to 20 people, that's a 2% click-through rate. And you have an extra 10 people or an extra 10 opportunities for somebody to convert on your website at no extra cost. If you can increase that overall conversion volume, you can have Meta be that bit more confident in your ability to convert users, your expected purchase rate increases, and then you start to change the cycle for the better. So I'm yet to come into an ad account, either a low spending ad account, this mid-tier, or even a high spender if you're spending over 100K per month, that doesn't benefit by increasing creative velocity. So that is the fourth and the most important thing I will say. If you want to lower your Meta ad costs, you have to increase your creative velocity. So if you want lower CPMs, here are the 4 things that you need to be doing. The first is you need to be constantly looking for pattern interrupt hooks, things that are going to stop the scroll, things that people are not seeing 10, 20, 30 times in their feed every time they scroll through. So be novel, be different, and you will grab attention. The second thing you want to do is engagement hacking ads. Only when it matches your brand and only when it isn't to the detriment of your conversion rate. So as I said, if you're not sure how to do this, I think the best bet are the 5-second kind of video ads that essentially can convey an offer. So we've Mother's Day coming up. That's a great opportunity to try these. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, things like that are always a good opportunity to use these style of ads. The third thing is influencer whitelisting. I cannot stress this enough. It is such a good way of lowering your CPMs and ultimately giving you that extra unlock of margin that you need to then reinvest and actually scale your ad account. And then the fourth most dramatic thing you can do to improve ad performance overnight is increase creative velocity. So you can do all these 3 things and then do it 2, 3, 4 times more often than you think you should. And then you will put yourself in a very good position. So as you know, this document is in the description, and you can also join our email list where we drop all sorts of guides, how-tos, free courses, basically sharing everything we know to scale D2C brands in 2025. And then if you need more help, you can book in a call with me personally. We can have a quick chat and discuss how we can help your business. I'll be back very, very soon to show you even more ways that you can use meta ads to grow your brand more predictably and most importantly, more profitably in 2025. So I will see you at the next video.